2 thumbs up. Well, a thumbs up from me. Jay?
I'll give it a thumbs up. It was good.
All right, 2 thumbs up. Okay, now I'm gonna turn it over to my man, Just Johnny. Keeping it simple, keeping it direct with this brand new character. I'm not sure I got the name right. Is it Samus?
I came so close.
Samus Arnold.
Seamus Arnold, Patrick. I'm running out of Irish
Is that
names.
Patricia? Is that
No,
Patricia? Patrick?
No. It's this new game series called Matryoshka. Apparently, like you duck in like seven smaller versions of yourself, and then you try to sneak in. I don't know what's going on.
You're a mess.
No, you're talking about Metroid Samus Returns. And what happens in this Metroid game? Well, Samus returns.
She returns. So Metroid Samus Returns is a remake of a really, 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 really old Metroid game. Specifically, Metroid 2: Return of Samus.
Wow, came back in 1990.
I think 1990 or 91. Yeah, it was either 90 or 91.
I was but a young pup
when this game was made, or the original game that this is a remake of, and it's way more than just a remake of. But to put into perspective, graphics-wise, we're talking Game Boy. For the original Game Boy graphics, everything's green and black, and it just looks very blocky. We're talking like,
well, it's an old game. Like we talking like you I don't know if you have a video of it now, but this was the best we got back then. When on Game Boy, it was spinach green. It was it was spinach green on pea green. And this tiny screen where the best you could, and God forbid you had the Superboy, the Super Nintendo cartridge that you installed Game Boy games into, and found out they were actually coded with the proper color because they plan on doing something like that. And you saw how messed up these things actually were.
Or the GBA player for GameCube, where you could also take old school Game Boy games and Game Boy Advance games and play them on your.
So you could ruin your previous experience. Where I'm sure this would be great if it was blowing up. Jack.
Yeah, it really did ruin the experience. I was quite bitter. I was like, I wasted all the time.
Yeah, so out of the Metroid games, sort of Metroid 2 for the Game Boy was, I guess, the black sheep of the group, because not only did
the real black sheep.
Not only did it like
black sheep
play, very slowly. It was a bit clunky. It didn't have the map that was brought in on Super Metroid. So
wait, so this wasn't a good game?
It was okay, but it was the worst of the Metroid games.
Oh wow! Well, then why remake this
a do-over, man? It was a mulligan.
Well, the thing is, it was the worst because of the tech at the time, right? This is very old. This is one of the first, or in the early, very very early iterations of Game Boy games to release, right? We're talking like Super Mario Land only had 4 levels.
Yeah, no, I vaguely remember that because I never got to play it, so I was looking up this sucker hard in Game Boy and Game Pro magazine.
Game
Pro. Way back.
So out of all the games, and there have been other Metroid games that got remade. There was Metroid Zero Mission, which was a remake of the very original Metroid. So that got a remake. A little over 10 years ago, I think about 12 or 13 years ago.
I remember when that dropped.
And it was a phenomenal remake, absolutely spectacular. They took the Super Nintendo graphics and sort of redid it, and that was a game that absolutely needed it because the original Metroid is extremely hard and it's unguided, right? There's no map, there's no way to sort of figure out where you need to go next. So they added a lot of the extra gameplay enhancements, things that made it a bit easier and less frustrating to sort of get through. Not necessarily difficulty easy. I'm just saying streamlining the process of playing through the game. They did that for Metroid Zero Mission, and after Metroid 2, which was Super Metroid, it's essentially arguably the best in the franchise. So, and it introduced all of those things that streamlined it. So
Metroid, so they had good ideas on like a really crappy platform. And I'm not to knock the Game Boy itself, but it had hard limitations. Like I had a Game Gear, and even the color set it like, even though the Game Gear took 17 batteries, for a solid half hour game, for a solid half hour play. But even the color set it way apart.
It did. It was head and shoulders above. I just remember being a kid, being jealous of my friends who had Game Gears, and I had the
did you know, my man,
I had the Game Boy, thinking, man, This sucks. I just want to play Tetris. Well, y'all got to play columns in color.
Oh, we were so simple.
Yeah, so after the Zero Mission remake, Metroid 2 was definitively the worst in the franchise. So, fast forward to today, they remade it. They didn't go the full 2D route, but it's still that traditional 2D gameplay, but with very nice spruced up for 3DS.
Yeah, I noticed that in the video. It was kind of like 3DS, kind of like the same way they did an update of Bionic Commando.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's not 2D, but it still has that feel. But it still looks kind of like the 3D animation in there.
Yeah, it's 3D graphics on 2D gameplay.
Yeah.
So it has that very traditional 2D Metroid gameplay that it's actually been since Zero Mission that has had that. So it's been 13-ish years since the last 2D game-playing Metroid game. It's been quite a while since just the last good Metroid game. One of the last ones, there was one on 3DS, which doesn't even count. It wasn't even the same style of Metroid-style gameplay. It was this first-person co-op shooter-style game called Federation Force, and a lot of people didn't like that. The one before that was Metroid Other M. That was very controversial. It was.
I know Samus was naked throughout the whole thing. She was making all types of anti-Semitic statements, man. Crazy game.
There were some issues with that one, but so the last actually legitimate Metroid game was Metroid Prime 3 Corruption, or
I thought cats hated Prime.
No, Prime is amazing.
Really?
The whole trilogy of Metroid Prime is absolutely fantastic. It's one of the best in the series.
Oh, which one was poorly received? I thought it was Prime.
It was Other M.
Other M, okay.
Other M, yeah.
All right.
That was the one, and it was a mixed bag. It wasn't the worst of the group, but it was certainly a mixed bag. Metroid Prime Federation Force, which is that one I was mentioning, that is the one that was more recently absolutely poorly received. Fans did not want it. They did.
No, of course. You can't set Metroid in the Starfleet universe, man. That's crazy.
Yeah. You weren't playing as Samus. You're playing as these troops, and you're.
I think you're playing as Janeway. You're sitting there giving orders to the Metroids, and then they run you over.
It was a very level-based style of game. But anyway, back to Metroid Samus Returns. So they remade this game, and not only did they do a remake of giving it the nice shiny coat of awesome graphics.
It's so pretty.
Very pretty graphics, spectacular audio, by the way. Okay. Absolutely spectacular. It went really good.
It's got the soundtrack with the jams.
I got the special edition. It came with the sound, a handpicked selection of tracks from both this game and from prior Metroid games.
Okay, well, wait a minute. I was kidding, but the old Metroid games, they didn't have a soundtrack. They just had like ominous.
That is the Metroid soundtrack. It is
you bought an extra disc of just that.
Yeah. It's spectacular. There is music. There's a whole lot of music in the Metroid franchise, but it is very atmospheric at times. The music.
It's like this droning, and Johnny's just at home like with the
dancing around
with the controller in his hand. All right. Okay. So that's the history and that's the props, man. Give us the lowdown. What was it a good game?
It is a fantastic game. They did a really good job here. So they updated the graphics and the audio, spectacular, and then they also enhanced the gameplay that was there. They added very new gameplay elements that were either taken from newer Metroid games, so therefore Metroid, the one that this is based off of, never had those gameplay elements.
Wait, so what are you talking about? Like it goes in 3D?
For example, the grapple hook was never introduced in Metroid 2, but they put it as an item in this game. So they have power-ups that Samus gets in other Metroid games. They insert those into here, and that changes up the gameplay and how you explore the world and how you progress. But then they also insert brand new things that were never in a Metroid game before, like there's a melee parry button that you get that really cranks up the action and the difficulty of this game. There's also these Aeon abilities, these essentially superpowers that have never been in a Metroid game before. They added in there, and they added it in a way that doesn't make it overpowered. It doesn't make it feel like it detracts from the core Metroid experience. It feels like it is now the new standard way to play a Metroid game. Both of these elements, both the melee and these Aeon powers, as well as other things that they've included that were tied into prior games in the past.
What kind of other things? We're talking like whenever Metroid rolls, whenever Samus rolls into the ball, now she's got a sidekick named Tails that just kind of jumps out of nowhere, that helps fly to different parts of the level here.
No, some of it is a bit of smaller stuff. Like there's these teleporters that you can now take. So it really whittles down on the backtracking they have to, or at least the time it takes to backtrack.
Okay, because the backtracking is what turned me off the Metroid originally, like way back in the day. Yeah. When you have to go all the way back to the beginning. Oh no, Super Metroid was the worst because you had nothing and you going all through that damn ship.
Oh, and you can't say Super Metroid is the worst on anything.
Was the worst?
It's a perfect game.
Oh. What?
It is a perfect game.
What?
Super Metroid is probably the best game ever made. Probably.
Well,
I'm still, processing it in my head.
I feel like you're a man that never played Flashback. Any of the Flashback was amazing. Yes, Flashback was the most beautiful game, the most ridiculously hard detective story, and the most impossibly just hateful. You paid for this game. I'm gonna make you pay for it with your sanity purchase I've ever made, and it was wonderful. A game that I did not beat until decades later when I got my first emulator, and I'm like, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna finally conquer this sucker, man. Yes, that right
hilarious.
There. That right there is the
hashtag yes. Petty. He was like, I'm not letting this go. I'm not letting this go.
I will not let it get the best of me.
So, Metroid Samus
perfect
Returns
game. He says you are crazy.
Is actually so. If the last few Metroid games you've played is Super Metroid or the Metroid Prime games, or even if you're a veteran of the series and have played essentially all of them, this game is going to change. It changes things up so dramatically that it's a new way of playing Metroid, and the way I mean that is it still has the elements of the exploration, the atmosphere, the pseudo aliens horror-esque vibes, and they really crank it up on this one, which is spectacular. Love it. But they turn this into a way faster, action-paced, harder, more mature Metroid. Something that I haven't experienced in quite some time. Probably going as far back as the original Metroid Prime, but once again, way more action, way faster pace than any of the other Metroid games. You're always on your feet because the enemies are absolutely aggressive. They will attack you immediately as soon as you get within their field of vision. They will start going at you, and you have to be on your toes. You have to, melee parry. You have to freeze them, missile them, and you have to balance between a lot of different abilities. All these new powers that they're giving you, they're really testing you. It's like they made a game for themselves because they themselves are fans with the of the series.
Okay, then I'm glad you brought all that up because let me ask you, because you're a fan of the Metroid series, you're a hardcore fan.
Yep.
Now, like you said, this is a remake of a game that previously existed. So if I'm not such a huge fan of the Metroid series, I'm just a regular gamer looking for something new to play. What will get me to purchase this? Is it worth my money if I'm not that huge? Adjustments behind the scenes, kids. If I'm not a hardcore fan to begin with, I'm just a casual player of the series,
Yeah, that is.
I'm more of a Flashback fan.
Yeah, that is something I was thinking about.
Nice plug there, Pete.
That was something I was thinking about. Is they definitely geared this game towards fans of the series, and the difficulty is there to match. But the Aeon abilities really do help. If you are able to leverage them, they do help with sort of easing yourself into it. But I think there's always going to be that difficulty of the combat, and the enemies do a lot of damage and all of those things. There is an easier difficulty mode, but if you're going at normal, you're going to find it very challenging. So I would say the big attractor is that this is a very sci-fi horror-esque environment in a very hostile world in a very alien planet, and those things I think are gonna be big attractors. If you're a fan of aliens, and I'm talking,
and who isn't? I mean, come on. They're from other places. They're all exotic.
For this type of game, I'm actually kind of surprised that it doesn't have sort of a more mature line of rating, because it could it is a mature game without like the blood and gore and things like that.
All right, so it's mature as in Samus is dropping F-bombs left and right. The Metroids are hitting you with their penises now.
They are hitting you with their tentacle teeth, sucking,
tentacle
energy
teeth.
draining, weird.
Sold.
There's mutations in here.
They're sucking and then draining.
Yeah. They're floating around. They have their feelers out.
You're selling this the wrong way.
They got their feelers out. They're floating out there.
Somebody's going to buy it.
They're feeling on. It's horrible. All right, now I feel like we're taking the prestige away from this game. Okay, so now that's a lot of positive. Is there anything negative about this? Because the original game itself wasn't that stellar, as you've like plainly let us know. Yeah. Okay, so what is there any downside to this sucker?
I would say the downside, if you are a newcomer to the series, the difficulty of the combat can be a detractor. It can also be an attractor, right? If you're into action, very heavy action games, you're going to love this. There's a lot of exploration. There's backtracking, but this is probably the Metroid game with the least amount of backtracking. Also, there's the teleportations going from one area to another, and it's
making me run all over this ship left and right. I got asthma.
And the world design is a little bit more linear, where you're going from one major section to another with little reason to return back other than to power yourself up. Negatives. It's really hard to come up with negatives on this. I mean, for the most part,
from somebody who's not as raving, drooling fan over Metroid, what would be the downsides? Because I remember a couple of the really big pains in the ass for me were you would go, you'd find out something, you go to this room and you go back here 3 times and you get this special thing, and then you go back to this room that you couldn't access before, and blah blah blah, and all that would be for some small trinket, no real advantage. It's more of like an in-game trophy type thing. So, something that would make it worth my while and gameplay-wise.
So for something like that, they have one of the very first brand new abilities that's never been in a Metroid game, the Aeon abilities. There's 4 different ones. One of the very first one you get actually allows you to send out this pulse that reveals hidden areas around you. So if you don't want to go around and if you're getting stuck somewhere and you don't know where to go next, you just hit that button and your localized map will get revealed for where there could be potential hidden areas that you can then explore and give you an idea of where you need to go next.
Okay.
So there's more guidance there, but it's also not forced guidance, which I think is a pretty ideal way of handling it.
All right, and something that I know it came much later, but a problem that I had in this series that I first noticed in Metroid and couldn't quite put into words until it brought it to light. The Abe's Odyssey series, the Oddworld series, Abe's Odyssey, Munch's Odyssey.
Yep. What about it?
One of those main problems that I originally found in Metroid and couldn't really place my finger on is that when backtracking is part of the gameplay, it's used effectively versus it's just in there for filler. You said this game is shorter. It's shortest.
No.
Okay.
This game is actually pretty long. It's probably one of the longest 2D gameplay Metroids out there. The map is absolutely huge. There's a lot to do, a lot to explore. It's varied, so it has a lot of that going for you. But once again, you don't have to worry about the backtracking. Okay. The backtracking is really like a means of grinding in like an RPG. To level up. It's
them dragging it out when they didn't have any more gameplay to fill in the spots. They just had a quota of like time span and stuff. You're saying this one doesn't suffer from that, because that's gonna turn me off to the sucker.
It doesn't. It's actually pretty streamlined. It is.
If I play this game and there's backtracking, Johnny, I'm coming for you.
It's only backtracking if you feel like you need to backtrack to find more power-ups to power yourself up. So if you suck at the game, then you kind of need to backtrack in order to power yourself up a little bit. But if you got the skill like I do, I didn't have to backtrack.
You cocky son of you, man, really? All right, so it sounds. I'm sorry. I'm sitting in bootleg chairs here and I'm sliding off this little ledge we got on the floor.
The other thing about this, here's a negative, is that potential negative is that if you are a fan,
you're gonna be like, well, here's a negative. In the game itself, it's just too great. It doesn't stop here's the negative. It's a game that's so good it doesn't stop to smell the roses once in a while.
There is very, very limited storytelling. So if you want a
game that's so great, it might be addictive.
if you want a story-oriented game and to be presented an interesting story, don't come to Metroid series at all for something like that. The storytelling is show and not tell. So as you're playing through the game, that is the story. Now, I'm not saying that it's. I don't want to make it seem like it's more interesting than what it actually is. Metroid Prime absolutely landed the show don't tell and did that sort of immersive storytelling. But for this, it's very much backseat. You're not going to get a storyline in this until you get to key points. There are some elements there, but it's.
Well, it's purely action platformer.
It's purely action platformer. It's gameplay first, without a doubt.
All right, so make the call, my man. Thumbs up, thumbs down.
You already put the thumbs up, man.
You already did?
Man. Thumbs up's been there since the beginning.
Oh, okay.
Susan.
now it's live.
So you said just Johnny's like, thumbs up? I'm going to tell you why.
Definitely.
It's like, Johnny, you're talking about Metroid. Thumbs up. You haven't played the game yet. Oh, I'm not. Don't worry, I know.
It's one of the easiest thumbs up I can give. I mean, it was a no-brainer going. But, it's just very high production value. The controls are absolutely super tight. They have the free aiming going on.
It's like, well, a negative would be there's just not as much as I would have liked because the game ended at some point.
It's like one of those. Give me your weakness. You know what my weakness is? That I work too hard. That's my weakness.
Johnny's like, a negative would be it's just too fun, and I wanted to play other games at some point. But
God, the music is just too good. I'm like listening to it. I had to switch my headphones from these dinky things I have over here, the earbuds, to like the full like over the ear like high quality audio because it was just so good.
A negative is I had to buy a new computer so I could properly respect it. Man.
You know, the system I was playing on is not ideal. I was playing on
the system wasn't good enough for the game.
It actually wasn't good enough for the game. I kid you not. If you're playing on the 3DS, then you're gonna experience a little bit of frame stuttering, a little bit of drop frames.
Now, to be fair, this is a port over from a Game Boy game.
No, this is complete remix.
Okay, all right, but then still going off the original game base. I mean, maybe that stuff was in there for nostalgic purposes.
No. It could have run smoother, but also don't forget this is like weird Nintendo stuff. Like Nintendo has a new 3DS. I don't have the new 3DS, and the new 3DS has better horsepower.
Nintendo comes out with 4 different 3DSs every month.
And the new one has more horsepower. So if you're playing on a new one, you're not going to experience the frame, the frame skips and all that stuff. If you're playing on the older one, it's still not there. But if you turn the 3D all the way up, 3D effect,
you got to crank it to 11.
Absolutely awesome. This is probably
you got to crank it from 3 to D.
It is one of the best 3D.
You got to throw some D's on it.
Glassesless 3D effects in a game to experience. But once you turn that up, it might chug a little bit here and there. So.
Okay, well, no, that's you saying like it's a bad thing, man. I like games that give you that interlace option. Can I slow down my frame rate? Can I make it choppy? Just because it's nostalgic. It makes me feel comfortable.
It's mostly smooth.
I like having a blow on the cartridge.
It's mostly smooth when you crank it up and you're in the middle of combat. Sometimes it can skip a little bit, but if that becomes a problem, you can always turn off the 3D and then it runs smooth.
Oh, you can. Okay, all right, cool. Yeah. All right, you may have sold me.
Oh,
even though you're like its only flaw is that I only got to play it once.
This is going to take hours, many hours to get through and beat.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you. That was Metroid Samus Returns. Available now.
Available right now.
Available now for the 3DS, Nintendo 3DS.
Yep, and the new 3DS and the 3DS XL and the new 3DS
Nintendo
XL, the 2DS,
but not the Switch.
Not the Switch. You know what? That is a major negative. You know what? That is the negative.
We finally got one.
It's not on the Switch.
That is not on a Switch.
I would love for this game to be on the Switch.
All right. Okay. All right. Well, we're gonna let Johnny climb down off Samus's tip and pass it over to JM the Thriller Priests for WWE No Mercy.
Yay.
No Mercy.
Oh man! After I done spilled, all y'all who watching on Twitch see me done.